I'm going to start the recording now. We started a meeting maybe a minute and a half ago, and I made a motion to start the meeting. Dan seconded. Everyone was in favor. We said the pledge, and then I remembered to start the recording. So here we are. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second, David.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So announcements, one right off the top. Due to COVID-19, the tax collector will be limiting payment options for the 2021 tax collection season. We will not be accepting cash payments or payments made in person. You can mail in your payment, drop it in the secure drop box on the outside of Town Hall, or call the office to arrange payment by credit card. All credit card payments will be subject to a 2.65% transaction fee. We apologize for the inconvenience, but thank you for your cooperation and understanding. And so I don't know if people want to talk about, COVID numbers. They have been going up quite a bit. We've been putting some info out on the LEPC, but we've also been getting a lot of requests from people wanting to know, where in town, what's happening. And, we just want to let people know we don't have that information. And even if we did, we wouldn't be allowed to share it because of, the medical privacy. HIPAA. Yeah. And so, the county and the state has that information, and they're looking for hotspots. And if there are hotspots, there'll be additional testing. The county has mobile units. But knowing that there's a hotspot in your neighborhood shouldn't really change your behavior at all. You are responsible for wearing a mask, washing your hands, being as careful as possible. What we do know is that the numbers are going up very fast in Ulster County and in New Paltz in particular. So now's not the time to let your guard down. Now it's things are worse now than they were at the worst in the spring. And so as careful as you were in March and April and May, it's time to go back to being like that. The example I use is, back in the spring, we were going shopping, for our household, maybe every 2 weeks. We were being really careful. We would come in, we'd wash our hands, change our clothes. Maybe that doesn't make sense, but that's what we were doing. And, we've kind of relaxed, and now we'll just run out and, grab a bag of chips or something. And, I think it's time to reevaluate and to kind of go back to the way we were when this started. I know it's not fun to think about it, but I think that we probably need to all buckle down again. That's just kind of what I wanted to say. And if anyone else wants to add anything, please do so.
I think that was great, Neil, but also just want to acknowledge and recognize that there are folks who do need to go out and work, including many of our employees, because they're essential workers. So thank you to all the workers who make it possible for those of us that are able to hunker down and hibernate and shelter in place for a while again. So thank you.
And so with that, I don't have any other announcements. Does anyone else have any? If not, we will open the floor for public input. So if people have anything they would like to say, please raise your hand. We will call on you in order and try to keep it to 3 minutes. And I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we will move on to the S.E. Lewis. You're here. Would you like to give us an update on the Police Reinvention and Reform Commission?
Yes. Thank you, Neil. Last week was Thanksgiving, and I'm trying to hold myself in the place of gratitude. So for that, I just want to say I'm thankful for this town. this town that raised me, and I'm able to raise my daughter in, and I'm grateful to the town board for letting me present in this capacity. So I'm here as the spokesperson for the Police Reform and Reinvention Committee. We're in the inquiry phases. We have reviewed with Chief Lucchese the policies and procedures and familiarized ourselves with the department. In November, we started holding a series of meetings. We started with a town hall, and then we've met with UACT, Community for New Paltz Community for Safety, for Public Safety, Resisterhood, the Community for a Responsible Budget. We did get some very helpful input that we will continue to look at. Going forward December rather, those were in November. In December, we have on our agenda, actually the rest of my board is currently meeting with the tavern owners. We will be meeting with Sisters of Sojourner's Truth, Concerned Parents in the beginning of January. And there is one other, Racial Equity Committee as well is in December. And then we have scheduled, or we will be scheduling in January, the District Attorney's Office, Public Defender, and hopefully we will have an opportunity to meet with the town board as well. We're also looking to meet with people who live in Meadowbrook as well as the community at Woodland Pond. So that's where we are right now, looking at those meetings. Thinking of reimagining, in one of our phases, we're going to be looking at the Town Law 150, and then also looking into qualified immunity. So those are some of the things that are on our agenda now and in the near future. We do put postings on the local access channel so people can see the dates and who we're meeting with. And if anybody is looking to contact us, our email is npprrc@gmail.com. And I'm open for questions. And again, if there's any questions that come up in the interim, people can always reach us at that website.
Hearing none, I'm just gonna again say thanks to you all now
Let me
for
see a
doing all
question.
this work.
Can I
You?
just, I just have a quick, could I have a
Go
quick,
ahead, Al.
oh, sorry, just a quick question. Essie, I'm wondering, have you reached out to any of the Latino organizations in the area? I know that there's also, some big issues with the Latino community. Obviously, ICE has been a big problem, but ABC Latino in Kingston is a really great organization that represents a lot of umbrella smaller ones that might be nice to contact.
Okay, we'll do that. I wrote that down, ABC Latino, and that's in Kingston.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, if you think of any others, please feel free to email me.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. And thanks, Essie. And please send all of our gratitude back to the full group as well.
Will do. I'm going to jump off as soon as I'm finished here to get to the tavern owners meeting.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Essie.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to move on to the Climate Smart Communities Annual Report. Janelle Piotr and Amanda Gatto are here. I will hand it over to the two of you.
Hi, all. Janelle is joining us shortly, but we just want to thank you for this opportunity to be here and tell you what we've been up to all year. It's been a very busy year. We're very excited that I think you've got the report that was drafted, but we achieved bronze certification in March, and that was a giant effort on the part of our volunteer members, but also with the help of and support of the town and village municipalities. So we needed to have 120 points to achieve that certification. We actually came up with enough actions to generate 158 points. And these were things like having the task force in place and having a coordinator, completing that comprehensive local government operations greenhouse gas inventory for both the town and village, adopting the CCA, the community choice aggregation, counted towards that, the LED streetlights program, having a unified solar permit, having publicly accessible EV charging stations, incorporating smart growth principles into land use policies and regulations, and completing the climate change vulnerability assessment, just a number of things, as well as hosting a number of climate-related public events. This year has been equally busy. We started off about this time last year, finding out that the grant application we had submitted for to the DEC Hudson River Estuary Grant Program to do a natural resource inventory had been awarded. So we spent the first quarter of this year putting together an RFP for the consultant and interviewing and choosing the consultant, getting that contract in place, and also creating what's called a state master contract, which requires a detailed timelines, deliverables, and budget. And that got approved by the DEC in March. So we were able to have our kickoff meeting on March 24th. And since then, the Climate Smart Task Force, the ENCB, and CWASP have all been putting together the data sources, photos, and a lot of background information to provide to the consultant. And as a result, that consultant has produced 28 draft maps that highlight each of the different types of resources that are being covered in this report, and also a report outline. We've had several meetings, Zoom meetings, and the final maps, the draft report, and an interactive story map that's going to be an online tool where people can go and look at a certain type of resource and then drill down all the way to the parcel level and back out again. We're working on that, and we hope to have that presented to you in March for your input before it's completely finalized. And of course, because it's a grant, we've been having to prepare the quarterly reports and documentation that's required by the by DEC to get reimbursement for the consultants' invoices. So another big project we had that you probably remember, it's fairly recently, we had the flood mapping project presented to the joint boards. This is a project that was taken on by Woodwell Climate Research Center as a pilot, working together with ICLEI, which is the International Coalition of Local Environmental Initiatives. And they chose New Paltz as one of 3 small communities in the US to include in this pilot. And thanks to that, it was done for no cost, no dollar cost. I won't say there was no cost because there was manpower involved, but so the town and village got the the benefit of this. And there were a number of meetings, and they've put together that presentation that you saw. That's interesting because it goes above and beyond what FEMA does, because it incorporates both the rainfall source of flooding as well as the river flooding, and also incorporates the projections for climate change from now until the end of the century. So we get a good look at what it could be happening here in New Paltz in terms of flooding, and how that information can perhaps be used as we go forward in thinking about land use and protection for key infrastructure. So we've taken that show on the road a little bit. We've presented it to the town ENCB. We're going to be offering it to the Village Environmental Policy Board, the Historic Conservation Board, CWASP, the planning boards, and even the police and fire chiefs, just as basic information so they can all see and profit from the results of that project. I think you probably remember also the Climate Smart Resiliency Planning tool that was completed for the town and village with the Cornell Cooperative Extension Consultants. There again was no cost to us. We were sponsored by the Hudson River Estuary Program from DEC, and we had those results available. But the Climate Smart Task Force is continuing to look at those results and recommendations and think about what actions we might be able to consider that would also go towards silver certification points and come back, with some thoughts for you guys, hopefully in the first quarter of next year. And then the last thing we're working on is updating the local government operations greenhouse gas inventories. The last time we were before you guys, we had data from 2013, 14, 16, and 17. So we're now updating with the data from 2018 and 2019 with supreme support from town finance and village DPW. And we also have a student intern that's working with us on that. And I'm kind of hoping, is Janelle here yet? No, okay. Well, Janelle is the coordinator who has been incredibly like our Energizer bunny. So we have task force meetings monthly from 7 to 9 p.m. Those agendas and minutes are archived on the town and village websites. But Janelle has been so proactive. She has created 2 really interesting outreach community involvement opportunities. One is the meetups that are climate change solution meetups that are held on the first Tuesday of every month with a host of different topics that are related to climate change, but are also sort of hands-on action type things that folks, want to think, what can I do? What are ways that I can make a difference in terms of climate change? And she's listed a number, the different topics that were presented this year. It's been everything from how to plant trees that are going to be adapted for climate change to what is your electric bill actually telling you, what are all those different charges about, climate smart investing, climate smart voting, refrigerants, a whole host of things there. And also a climate smart book club that started in February of this year, meets monthly. And again, the books chosen are focused on various aspects of climate change. And we've got a really good turnout with that. There's up to 49 people that go on Zoom to do that book club. And let's see, what else did she do? Oh, the newsletters that are put out every month. And also there was a presentation to the Rotary in January. We have a social media presence on Facebook, Instagram, and Meetup. We've been mentoring interns. This was another thing we got to do. Both Janelle and I were invited to attend ICLEI's nationwide climate action and adaptation plan training course. We met twice a month for over the 7 months of that program with our counterparts from across the nation, as far away as Hawaii and as close as Massachusetts, working on, understanding and looking at different tools for climate action and adaptation plans. And let's see, what else? We normally have a lot of face-to-face community outreach events that of course have not been possible this year. And that's a real shame. It's been a challenge for us to be as engaged as we would like to be with the community. But we are, as you see with all the different social media and Zoom events, we're doing our best. And then the last item here on the report is our task force committee members are not just focused on climate smart. They're involved in a host of other groups and committees in the town and village, like the Bike Ped Committee, the Environmental Conservation Board, Planning Board, the Ad Hoc Solar Law Committee, the Solar at the Landfill Subcommittee, Complete Streets Ad Hoc Committee, the Climate Action Coalition, New Yorkers for Cool Refrigeration Management, the Ulster County Solar Parking Canopy Working Group, which is a new one, and Ulster County Climate Smart Committee. So the team stays busy, the program stays very active, and we just wanted to keep you guys up to date.
Thanks, Amanda. This is Tim. I just wanted to share with Amanda, and you could bring it back to Janelle and other folks. I participated in a Department of State panel this afternoon and another panel on Monday, and the panel was discussing how New York State will achieve its greenhouse gas reduction goals And, you know, these various city officials, elected officials, planners, you know, they were talking about, you know, their various efforts to collect data and the teams that they have working on and the staff that are involved. And, you know, I shared with folks from the Department of State, I'm like, yeah, we're trying to do exactly the same thing with hardworking volunteers. And, you know, I just want to, you know, give you guys, you know, a shout out in terms of how important your work is. And, you know, communities that are smaller like ours, you know, we couldn't do this. You know, you guys are doing exactly the same stuff that larger communities are trying to do, just in terms of collecting data to help us make informed policy decisions and then apply for grants, et cetera. But you know, thanks again for all your work and shepherding, you know, all the other volunteers.
New Paltz is a special place. What can we say?
I mean, it's just so amazing that we have so many dedicated volunteers. You guys do the work and we're just like, yep, okay, yep. So we can attend to other things because you're implementing our values for us. And it's just, you know, we can do so much more together. And I think what Tim and I are both saying, and all of us agree, is we want to make sure you get credit for that.
Well, thank you. You know, we're happy for you to double our salary anytime.
I can say that for school board too.
Yeah.
I want to say that was very well said, Tim and KT, and thank you, Amanda and Janelle, and others who are involved in this. And we really have so much. We're so grateful for the work you do, and I especially love the outreach, which sort of like probably is just the icing on the cake. But you know, these outreach things like a book club, I think they, you know, and other things that you mentioned, they really do have a big impact that you don't really realize. But you said 49 members of the book club. I want to join. And you know, interns, it's fantastic. So and all volunteers, so it's wonderful.
You know, one of the sort of unexpected benefits of having COVID and having to do everything on Zoom is that we're getting folks from all over the place on our meetups. I mean, it wasn't unusual to have people from elsewhere in Ulster County show up in person, but now we got people from Borneo, from Australia. I mean, you know, they see the topic and they're in like dark sky lighting. We had this lady from Borneo, like, wow, she was doing it at midnight, you know, it's just wow. But yeah, so it's surprising, but it's yeah, it's great. One thing Janelle and I wanted to ask you guys, if you're aware, but December 12th is the 5th anniversary of the Paris Climate Treaty Agreement. And we would hope that New Paltz Town and Village would make a statement of some kind of support for that. We certainly, as a Climate Smart group, were, you know, intend to do that, but just thought we'd throw that out there for you.
I bet we got something in the archives.
I think we did something last year.
Yeah. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's see if we can find, if we can do a save as an update.
That'd be
Sure,
great.
we can reheat something that we have.
Yeah.
So, all right, if that's all we have for the Climate Smart Annual Report, I wanted to move on to the bike ped discussion. And so, you know, Tim and I worked on a letter to the New Paltz Times, and I'm just I'll read it and then we can have a discussion. So in last week's New Paltz Times, several residents were concerned about an increased speed limit on Henry W. Du Bois as part of a proposed bicycle pedestrian project. This is, we are happy to say, incorrect. As elected officials, this is not something we would propose or willingly approve. If anything, we would prefer lower speed limits and would fight if there was even a remote possibility to lower them. The goal of this project is to increase safety for all users, bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. And the lower the speed limit, the greater the safety for everyone involved. It seems like the confusion comes from Exhibit 2.7 on page 27 of the design report. It says the proposed design speed is 35 miles per hour. The legal speed limit for the road is still 30 miles per hour and will remain unchanged. Design speed is related to operational speed and is not the speed limit. The roadway needs to be designed for the most likely rate of travel, regardless of the posted speed limit. The operating speed for roads is determined by the Department of Transportation using what is called the 85th percentile speed, which involves measuring the speed that 85% of the vehicles travel at or below. Although the operational speed for Henry W. Are currently 38.6 miles per hour eastbound and 36.6 miles per hour westbound, once these travel lanes are narrower post-construction, drivers will need to slow down. In this scenario, the use of a design speed of 35 miles per hour is consistent with the anticipated off-peak 85th percentile speed and within the range of the functional class speeds for the terrain and volume. So that, basically, we're not changing the speed limit at all. People misinterpreted what design speed actually meant. So hopefully this clears it up, and the letter's not too technical. So if anyone has any discussion on that.
Yeah, my question, Neil, is, we have, everyone knows how hard it is for us to try to get a speed limit reduced in our community. Does the DOT have the right to move a speed limit up without consulting the community in question and things like that? Do you know?
I don't know. We can find out, but we're proposing that the speed limit stays the same. And, I think we're going to fight pretty hard if they try to raise it. We're not in favor of it being raised at all. We can't make it lower than 30. We're not allowed by vehicle and traffic law to lower speed limits below 30 as towns under 50,000 residents. So, 30 is as low as we can go. And I think we'd like to keep it that way.
Thanks for clarifying.
I would add, as a village, we're not allowed to lower speed limits either per New York state law below 30 miles an hour. That's the stated speed limit for villages. But we can, if it's posted along a particular route, throughout that route, we can lower a speed limit. But generally, our hands are tied per New York state law. And I've seen draft legislation asking folks in Albany to consider, giving us more autonomy to lower speed limits, or even to, make village speed limits lower than 30 miles an hour. But 30 miles an hour, I mean, go ahead, drive around village streets at 30 miles an hour. You'll feel like an out of control maniac. Like, clearly 30 miles an hour is too fast for most of our streets.
Somebody's in the kitchen is on fire.
Okay, so village business.
Neil, can I just ask something real quick, Neil?
Sure.
Can you just, for anyone who's interested, just help people know when we'll be discussing the plan as a board?
I don't know if I have an exact date. I mean, it's a while before the DOT it's going to take them a while to approve the preliminary design. My guess is sometime January, February, March. Now's things slow down. It's going to be a while before they get back to us.
Okay, so the next steps right now are that the DOT's going to approve it.
I think they're going to give their feedback. That's my guess.
Their feedback, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's and we're not going to discuss it before that's done.
I don't think so. No. There's no point discussing it until we hear what the DOT has to say.
Okay. And so the one thing that I'll just mention, if anyone is interested, that in that plan it did have some speed reducing. I'm not sure what the exact word is. Design elements like speed bumps.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all part. That's what we will discuss later on. But I think the DOT has to look at the designs first.
And then we would be involved in approving anything.
Yeah.
Just to make sure, in case folks don't know.
Okay. Is that anything else? Village business. There's one item on the village business that needs addressing. Tim, do you want to make a motion? I think it's the consent agenda.
Yeah, I motion we move the village's consent agenda related to a sewer project and a drinking water project.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so you guys are done with the joint. You guys are welcome to stick around or adjourn. It's up to you. And we're on to the town board portion of the meeting.
Yeah, so I'll we can stick around, but I'm gonna motion that we officially close the village's portion of the joint meeting.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, and so this is the critical environmental areas discussion. So Ingrid Hakel, our ENCB chair, Michael Dupree, chairman of the Hyde Park Planning Board, are joining us to talk about critical environmental areas. And I'll hand it over to Ingrid. And if you need me to give you permission to share the screen, I'm going to make you a co-host.
That's okay. Thank you. No, I don't have a PowerPoint this time around.
Okay.
But thanks. Thanks to all of you for your time this evening. So I'm here once again about the critical environmental areas proposal. When we left off, I guess, last in early March, we were in the midst of a public hearing where you heard from a number of our residents and organizations working in the town. And then of course, COVID hit and everything was interrupted, and we obviously needed to pause and focus on other things for a while. But we believe it's time to return to where we left off. And the ENCB is very strongly urging you to take action on this proposal. So I'd like to just provide a really brief refresher about what CEAs are, and then introduce Michael Dupree, who's the chairman of the Hyde Park Planning Board, who can hopefully answer some more of your questions relating to how this sort of policy is implemented. Critical environmental areas, or CEAs, are areas with exceptional or unique environmental characteristics that may be designated by a local government according to State Environmental Quality Review Act regulations in New York. And in a nutshell, CEAs basically help to raise awareness about sensitive environmental features during the environmental review process and ensure that they're not overlooked. The CEA designation requires that during the environmental review, the planning board must consider how a proposed development might affect the qualities of the designated area. And the designation therefore ensures that these special features aren't overlooked and that any potentially harmful impacts to them are evaluated. CEAs don't protect land, and they don't restrict development or regulate land use in the way that zoning does. So really they require this consideration and kind of raise a red flag that there's something that needs to be addressed or looked at during the environmental review process. We think this is a logical thing to do to ensure that important natural resources are given due attention. The New Paltz Planning Board, of course, is very conscientious, but having this policy in place will help ensure that applicants are also aware early on about these ecological features, which don't otherwise have a standard checkbox on the environmental assessment forms that are used in this process, and those are referred to as EAFs. And EAFs are indeed very routinely filled out in a pretty perfunctory way using an automated online system from the DEC that queries state databases for certain information. And that information is valuable, but it's not going to give you very detailed information about local habitats or particular resources of concern in your community. And that's the role of CEAs. So by bringing up these environmental concerns early on in the planning process through CEAs and other tools like our habitat assessment guidelines, we can create a more streamlined review process that encourages conservation of our major natural features. The ENCB did a lot of research in proposing these areas, reviewing the town's comprehensive plan, our open space plan, and many ecological studies that have been completed. And the 6 areas proposed should be considered based on, they should be considered individually based on their merits and voted on individually. And they are the Shawangum Ridge, the Wallkill River and Kleinakill Corridor, the Swartikill Wetlands, the Plutarch Woods and Wetlands, Clearwater Woods, and Stonykill Woods. And I'm not going to go into detail about the exemplary values of these areas, which I've already presented to you back in February of this year and last year in April. And they're fully described in the proposal, which is on the town website. But they do, just to summarize briefly, they include the globally significant ridge ecosystems, 2 Hudson Valley significant biodiversity areas, a state level forest linkage zone that runs through New Paltz, intact habitat cores identified by Ulster County, a massive wetland complex, the Swartikill complex, almost 2,000 acres, habitat for state endangered species, and areas predicted to have high value for climate resilience. So this has been a really long and exhausting year, I have to say personally, I think for many others, but I'm returning tonight because I believe it's more important now than ever that the town formally recognize these critical environmental areas. Since COVID-19 hit, Ulster County has seen some of the fastest rising home prices in the nation. From October 2019 to October 2020, home prices increased by over 27% in Ulster County, and the number of closed sales increased by over 41%. This unprecedented real estate boom is creating tremendous pressure for housing that will undoubtedly lead to more residential development in New Paltz, and our zoning certainly permits that. Furthermore, our overnight shift to working remotely, working from home, is a lifestyle that's unlikely to reverse itself in any swift fashion. Rather, it's likely that many companies will continue to allow flexible work from home, and that has made New Paltz suddenly a very accessible place to live for many people with jobs based in New York City or beyond. The bottom line is, now is the time to be proactive about protecting valuable open spaces before it's too late. And CEAs are a very basic way to bring attention to those places as new development is proposed. And they can be used to better focus environmental reviews and encourage conservation of critical natural features. You should act on this proposal now because we don't know when a major project might be proposed in one of these areas. It could happen very soon. Voters also overwhelmingly support this idea. Our local proposition to establish a community preservation fund passed by a 3-to-1 margin with 74% of the vote, despite nearly $150,000 spent to defeat it. New Paltz voters want to protect clean water, farmland, and wildlife habitat. This result should speak very loud and clear to the town board. Voters care about the environment and are supportive of policies to protect natural resources. During the course of the public hearing so far, we've heard from 27 individuals and organizations overwhelmingly supportive. I've reshared the written comments you received in February and March, and to remind you of the great response that this proposal elicited. The hearing also brought up some questions from the planning board about how CEAs would be implemented and what the potential impact of this designation would be to project sponsors in these areas in the town. And to help better answer that question, I invited Michael Dupre to join us this evening. He's chairman of the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board, and he can give you a brief overview of how CEA designation has come into play in environmental reviews by his planning board. Hyde Park designated 4 CEAs about 15 years ago, around the same time that Mr. Dupre joined the planning board. He also serves on the Dutchess County Planning Board since 2012 and is chair of the Board of Trustees at Dutchess Community College. Michael retired from a career in editing and writing and is involved in many other volunteer activities across the river. So I thank you very much for your time, Michael, and I'm going to pass the baton over to you. Oh, we'll need to unmute.
It's a bad habit these days to be quiet all this time. Thank you, Ingrid, for your introduction and your kind words. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. I'm not going to really do a lot of speaking. I think I'm here really to answer more questions than probably lecture you or speak in that term. I do want to just start out by saying one thing. I've heard the term red flag, Ingrid used it, and it's also used in comments from your planning board to your board. We don't think of it as a red flag. This is my 16th year of being the chair of the planning board in our town, and we're considered a pro-development board. The first thing I always tell people is the enabling statute that creates planning boards from New York State says that the mission for planning boards is to promote the orderly development of town. It doesn't say deny development, it says promote the orderly. And there's maybe a little rub there about what's orderly and what's not, what's good development. But to me, we're here to make sure that we try to get a project that works for the project sponsor, the development community, as well as our town, because I also tell individuals before the board, applicants and their consultants, we also have clients. They're the current and future residents of our community because the decisions we make will impact their lives, our children's lives, our grandchildren's lives, the future more or less for a long, long, long time. So in my experience of doing this, I find that the development community wants two things. One is predictability. The other is advanced information. I will also add that they'd love to have infrastructure already there, but my town doesn't have commercial sewer, only have limited amounts of water. So development's a little more difficult sometimes over here. But what we found is that by designating the areas that are CEAs, it tells the development community in advance, there's going to be some more ecological sensitivity in these areas. And by that, I mean, when I first started, you had engineers and we'll call them developers, development community, would say, okay, I see this parcel, I'm allowed, let's say 72 houses. They wouldn't look at the presence of wetlands or anything else. It's, I'm allowed 72 houses. By designating a CEA, whether that's for significant natural communities, unique geological features, any of the items that Ingrid mentioned, you're telling the developers in advance, there are areas we may want to protect. You may not be able to get all 72 houses. And for me, rather than having a back and forth where we keep saying, no, the wetlands are going to limit this, this is going to limit this, it tells the development community straight up, this parcel is a little more unique. We do have 4 CEAs in our community. The last one the largest one we have is Hogback Hill. And that's primarily because of the presence of endangered, threatened, and rare species, as well as contiguous upland forest and significant tree communities. That area is approximately 12 square miles. But I also want to point out to you that a much smaller town, we have 22,000 residents here, a much smaller town and adjacent to us, Clinton, which has about 4,000 people, has 7 critical environmental areas. Now, they also don't just do it for endangered, threatened, and rare species. They also have vistas, things like your ridge that you're looking to protect as well. But that hasn't stopped development in Clinton either. I'll also tell you that the planning board participated in the creation of this critical environmental area. We had a grant from the Hudsonia and the DEC's estuary program. There were 6 of us on the planning board who went through a 6-month biodiversity assessment training. During that time, we were tasked with also looking at whether something should be a critical environmental area and actually map this one. We also had that with the CA. Ours is called the Conservation Advisory Council. The chair of the CAC applied for the grant at the time. My friend Emily Svensson, who was later elected to the town board, was the chair. They applied for it, and it was a great opportunity for us as board members to have 6 months in there. So far, nothing has really stopped any development there. I had a proposal for some townhouses. We managed to make certain that I shouldn't say townhouses, it was a mixture of townhouses and single family. That may sound odd, but at any rate, we got them to cluster everything into townhouses so they're kept away from the significant watersheds that they were first proposing to build right on top of, et cetera. This actually, there was no fighting. There wasn't any big issue. Once we said, look, this has already been designated as something that's critical, the developers were said, well, then we'll back off. We'll cluster these more tightly and just make them all townhomes. The process went very smoothly and quickly. The other thing I can tell you is we passed our county's first solar law. When the governor announced his more ambitious goals, I looked around at other communities and they were all, if there were solar applications, large ones, they were going through public utility, which involves regular site plan, et cetera, none of which seemed relevant. So we created our own solar law. To date, we've had 8 applications above 2.5 megawatts. We had one that was proposed in the Hogback Hill critical environmental area. And the reason I'm drawing your attention to it is, to us, it was a big test. When we referred this to the DEC, would the DEC say it's okay to go inside and put equipment and production into a wetland, one that we know that has sensitive resources? We have a population of Blanding's turtles, which is an endangered species over here, that are known to use this particular wetland. Because I kind of wondered, the governor has made it, this is a big push so that we would be less reliant on fossil fuels by, I think it's 2035. And you're not going to get that with just solar. It's going to be other aspects too. But in Hyde Park, we have a lot of opportunities from former farms to have solar arrays on them. And indeed, it turned out that the DEC did not want them to invade within the adjacent area, or buffer as it's normally called, much less go inside the wetland. And the project was ultimately pulled. Now, working with them, we actually got them a little bit bigger area. It was the same company in another area that they were proposing to try to offset this and not make them so upset. And it turns out the farmer who owned the other location, he also owns one that's mostly wet. So he was all happy with it, et cetera. And he, by the way, is a former town board member who actually opposed having a critical environmental area. I'll also tell you that 2 of my planning board members at the time also opposed it. And I'll quote one who said, "Humans are more important than critters." However, once we took both of these members out and showed them why we were designating this, showed them the beauty, but also the continuity, the ability for the endangered, threatened, and rare species, the ETR species, to have freedom of movement, both of them were like, okay, we're behind this after all. So it's an educational opportunity to me for your citizenry, but also it's a way to, again, benefit the development community because they have an idea already. Again, it's not a red flag to me. It's a, okay, wait, before I just go in and think I get everything, maybe I need to look and see what the features are that cause it to be designated this way in the first place. And I'll close by saying that this is sort of my own philosophy. And I've sort of, our board, we're very collegial, and my vice chairs have served as long as I have. Most of my board members have served over 7 years. We don't have a lot of turnover anymore, thank heavens. But our belief is that if the town board has designated an area for commercial development, that kind of trumps the environmental aspects. We have 2 large parcels. One is across from the Culinary Institute. It's 339 acres. Then I have sort of near that, a 146 acre parcel. Both were designated as PDDs, planned unit developments, planned development, one's called Bella, they're both called Bellafield. At any rate, one of them has a very high quality complex of vernal pools. This would be areas that we would have actually looked at to say, should these be CEAs as well? But because the town had already said, no, we want these to be developed commercially, what we did is, instead of designating the large CEAs, we're in the process of designating the complex of vernal pools a small CEA to say, this area should be avoided. That way the developer knows already in advance, because when there was a development proposal, it ultimately fell apart. But the DEC was requiring them, the applicant, to do radio monitors on any known turtles. That's a 3-year process. By us just sort of saying this area needs to be protected, it would have avoided that situation, because he went through 2 years before the market fell out, and that's why. But in other words, while we're pro-environment, we're not so pro-environment that we're saying stop development, because you have to go where it's appropriate. And the town board, they're elected by the citizenry. And so to us in the planning board, being an administrative agency, we're there to enforce the code. If the code says, no, we kind of want commercial here, then that's where it's going to go. I hope that helps as a sort of introduction. And by the way, we've had no controversy in our adoption process. Public hearings were held. We did send out notices to most of the property owners we could research. There's still several large lots within this 12 square mile radius or area. Many attended, but I don't recall any actually objecting. Most of them were curious about what it meant, because most people on property don't know what a CEA is. And I have to say, when I was reading some of the comments from the planning board and the attorney, There was a question about increased costs in delineation. I don't know exactly what that meant, but if it means delineating wetland boundaries, DEC more or less requires you to recertify, redelineate your wetland boundaries every 5 years because they creep. That would go in though to your normal seeker process by your planning board. So this doesn't compete with seeker. To me, it more or less enhances it because it's telling you in advance, you're gonna have to take an even extra hard look, more than just the required hard look you take already. I'm happy to take any questions you might have, or send it back to you, Ingrid.
I have a question, Michael. First of all, thank you so much for taking part of your evening
Sure.
to help the town of New Paltz around some of these questions and issues. I'm the town board liaison to the planning board, so I was there at the meeting when some of those questions came up, and it was a challenging meeting for sure. And so I'd like to understand a little bit more about how it enters the secret process. Is it on the environmental assessment form, is it just another question that is kind of like, are there CEAs that need to be considered here, and are they being affected? Is that as simple as it is?
It's as simple as it is. I mean, your zoning administrator or whoever is the first line of taking, I'm sorry, you just bopped around there. Whoever is in charge of assessing your first application should be able to say straight out, there's a CEA. In addition, of course, if this is a large development, or if your project sponsors come in with engineers, lawyers, planners, that are fairly sophisticated, they will have already gone through the DEC mapper, which will identify the critical environmental area immediately.
Yeah, thank you. And the other question I have is around what percentage of Hyde Park is in a critical environmental area? Do you know that?
We're about 90 square miles, and I haven't had maps since I was in the junior and high school. So if you can figure out the percentage of 12 square miles out of 90,
12 total. So 12
I'm
total.
sorry, 12,
are
that's 12 is just Hogback Hill. The other 3 are rather small. They're actually on the water, Vanderburg Cove. Each of those is probably about an acre. So we probably have about 15 acres of CEAs out of a total of 90.
15,
I literally,
15
I was able,
yeah, 15 out
I was
of
able
90.
to not take any math classes in college and grad school. I'm sorry to tell you. So I don't really know how to do the percentage. I'm embarrassed to tell you that now. But the other reason why I mentioned, I saw that comment that it would be 47% of your town that would be designated as a CEA. But I also, the reason why I brought up Clinton is it's much smaller than we are. And their 6 total, probably about 33% if I could just, like I was looking at the map to judge. So but they also, again, they have natural features they want to protect, like you. Our natural features are actually, our ridge lines are covered by something separate. We have scenic viewshed overlay districts, and those give it another sort of critical examination, because you're kind of a sister community across the river, but you're not a riverfront community. We try to be sort of extra polite to Esopus, Highland, the towns across from us, so we don't put things that are garish to stop the view the viewshed that they would want to have. So that's why we don't have CEAs, more of them, because we created overlay districts for scenic viewsheds.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I have one question. Thank you for coming. This has been super helpful. I really appreciate it. And so I guess, you kind of did it already, but just for my own education, can you walk us through, like, it would be an application, someone wants to build something in one of your CEAs. And so, they would go to the code enforcement officer, and the code enforcement officer or their attorney would say, yes, this isn't a CEA. And like David said, they check that off. Do they have to do anything else? Do they have to do like additional studies or anything like that?
No. The board is in complete control of this process, your planning board. If the board determines that, based on the fact that we already know it's a critical environmental area, that there's endangered, threatened, and rare species, if the data you use to create your CEA is so old that you want to update it, you could require the applicant then to find an environmentalist, go out and do a habitat assessment. But if I read correctly the comments from the planning board, they all agree that they do a really great job under seeker. You also have wetlands protection ordinances. You actually have more protections than what we do over in Hyde Park. But your board it's still in control. It's just a way of triggering to your board, hey, we know this area already, that there's something important about it. So again, they could ask for habitat assessments, but that wouldn't be any different than if they didn't have a CEA already. if they thought that it was something that that there should be a habitat assessment. This just more clearly puts it into perspective, if that makes any sense. And we're also, I'll be honest, we are free to ignore the fact that it's a CE designation as well. Again, it doesn't really have a lot of legal standing except under the seeker review to, again, alert you and the project sponsor that this is more sensitive land for a variety of reasons.
So I hear you saying, Michael, this, and I hear this from Ingrid also, it's just kind of an alerting people about known information about an area that we're like saying, hey, you let the planning board know, hey, we already know this is a sensitive area, right? So here, you be aware this is sensitive and that you're gonna need to take a harder look at the effect on the environment here.
Correct. It's that ER. A hard look is required under seeker. This might be a little bit harder look. I should also have told you or made the mention of the fact that I personally, and my board agrees, we hate to pause deck. It increases expenses, it increases time. What we do is, it's called an expanded environmental assessment form. So for example, if we know, let's say this is a subdivision proposal. If we know that the real thing is going to be is this is in Hogback Hill, but are there also patterns where the endangered threat ETR species have now migrated into this area because say there was some tree clearing, we've got some vernal pools, and so now we have solar penetration. We might want to update that, but that's usually about the only thing we would ask for in that sense, for the harder look, because again, the information is already there. And again, it's also not just telling the planning board to take a harder look, it's also to, kind of warn the applicant who might be looking to buy this, hey, as I said before, you're not going to get 72 houses, you may only get 60. You might have only gotten 60 without it being a CEA because of your wetlands, your knowledge of the planning board's knowledge of species that are there, other natural features. But this way in advance, it kind of tells them, don't try to cram so much on that you're going to ruin what caused it to be a CEA in the first place.
I'll just add something, Michael. Thank you for coming. And I think what you said made a lot of sense, that the development community wants predictability and advanced information. So, we have evidence that our town has, is full of people who are interested in, being careful about where development is. As Ingrid pointed out, the CP, the Community Preservation Fund passed by over 74%. We have a track record of people being, caring about these things. And, you said that there's no, drama around this. And I would predict that at least, there wouldn't be, much. It would be helpful rather than anything other than that. So.
Well, I should have added also that we did do outreach with some of the business owners or the property owners, I should say, that we knew who live in the area, to explain to them what it was, which is also why there was no drama, because I'm one of those who free plan, do everything you can to communicate, be as open as possible and explain what you're doing. And in all three cases, the owners had walked the property before. They were aware of some of the unique environmental features. One has a beautiful waterfall. We don't really have a lot of those in Hyde Park. I can tell you that I doubt that our citizenry would pass by 74% what you just accomplished, without being disrespectful to my community, because I love Hyde Park. I'm not from here. I've only lived here 28 years now. But I'm from Texas originally. I can talk like that if you want me to, Sugar. At any rate, once you go past 9G East, it becomes more, less, I don't want to say environmentally enlightened, but we'll say that it becomes more, people are more important than critters. But even those areas, we did a lot of education. My CAC chair at the time, Emily, was really good about explaining to people why we needed to save wetlands. That's one of those buzzwords that people are like, it's mosquitoes. And be like, no, it really is nature's sponge. And I remember one gentleman came up and said, have you ever tried to, wipe up water with a dry sponge? It doesn't do anything. And I thought, well, I can see it as the housework in your house. It's not dry. You have to use a wet one that's been squeezed out. It'll pick up everything. Once we just did some simple matter-of-fact explanations about why, and also why endangered, threatened, and rare species matter, to explain to people the longevity of the Blandings turtle and how it's used in research on cancer and things that can enable Americans to extend, or I should say humans, to extend their lives, people kind of backed off and went, oh, okay. So it's sometimes demystifying words that relate to environmentalism isn't the easiest, but once you kind of get it going, and as I said, we were very lucky that we had a CAC, we still do, that's very active about educating people. I mean, right now that's kind of shut down, but at our farmers market, we have tables periodically. We have Trees for Tribs, where we take elementary school groups to plant trees along, or small trees along the tributaries. That's all educational stuff, and it's all done by our CAC for the most part. So that also helped with the no drama, I'm pretty sure. I can tell you the last drama we had was we were passing zoning back in 2000. Well, we started in 2002. We originally had 6 acre zoning in our green belt, our least dense areas. And that pretty much caused controversy. It's now down to 1 dwelling unit per 2.5 acres with average density, and it required 30% open space. I should also tell you that the CEAs will also help, at least so far, and as I said, the subdivision that we've done thus far with the townhomes, we were able to show them where the open space needed to be very easily, because that was the most sensitive part of the land. They were, they have to have 30% somewhere. So by showing them, this is where we think it should be, and this is why, and there's a legal document behind it, they were like, fine, great. So to me, in other words, it's caused less conflict by having all the information up there up front.
Great.
I just want to thank you, Michael. I found this, and Ingrid as well, I found this really informative. I know we've had this conversation for a while now, but a lot's changed since, and this was really helpful, and I think it was a real service as well for you to come on over via Zoom to New Paltz and kind of tell people what you guys are doing.
I'm happy to. I'm sort of a land use junkie. Land use. So I really do treat the planning board chair as sort of a full-time job. That's why I signed on for a third 7-year term. I'm not sure I'm going to make it all the way through. As it turns out, Dutchess Community College, chairing that board has turned out to be really more than what I thought I would be handling right now because of COVID too, and pressures on all colleges because of enrollment. But land use sort of remains my first love, and I'm very fortunate and blessed to have both a town board that's supportive of what we do, but more importantly, 6 colleagues who I really treasure as friends. It's really rare that we have disputes. We come to a place where all 7 of us agree, which has been very fortunate, despite the fact that we all have different backgrounds. I didn't tell Ingrid, but I have an MBA. In my first 4 years out of the MBA program, I was in finance and made money, and that's why I kind of quit. Went back to writing and editing, my first love. And then I sold a magazine that I'd started and invested during the early Clinton years and made money. So I decided to give back to the community. So this is part of that, and I'm happy to do it. It's a pleasure meeting you all again. Dan, I know we've met before through other avenues. Good to see you again.
I see you as well.
Well, they're
that's all then.
Thank you, Michael. They're really lucky.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Thank you for coming. I think
coming. Zooming.
Yes, thank you so much, Michael. That was really.
You're very
informative.
welcome. I wish you luck throughout this process, and in advance, having lovely holiday season, no matter how you're celebrating, which I know will be different, but still, we have much to be thankful for no matter what. So take care, everybody. If I can be of any help, please contact me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Well, that was great. I think we're gonna keep talking about it and figure out what the next steps are, and we'll move forward.
I have a question. I know is it okay if I have a question that might lead to a short discussion?
Sure.
This idea that, I know we've talked about the site, whether we would take a larger, where is our map at, Ingrid, where you see it now? This number of 40% or 40 something percent of the town, is that the current percentage that we're looking at considering, or that you're hoping the board is considering, or I know you might be torn of what you're asking us to consider. How would you?
Well, the proposal that it's on the website. I mean, that has not changed. And I don't remember the numbers specifically at this point of what percent of the town the acreage is. I mean, I think that calculation maybe was made excluding the village. I mean, the village is not part of it, but yes, I agree. Some of these areas are large because the natural features are large. And I'll also just put out there that if the town board feels that some of these areas need to be reconsidered or perhaps or refined, then you should let me know, and we should discuss that.
I personally am not that hung up on a percentage, it's more, like you said, we want to consider each of the 6 areas separately. And so, I would figure that that's where we would be focusing rather than the percentage. I just thought, since he mentioned that one reason theirs isn't larger is if they have the scenic overlay districts, is that something that you think might have possibly apply in any way, or is that something you've already considered and thought that we need this, it's better to have it as a CEA?
I think that the CEAs could be a starting point for designating a conservation, like a foundation for a conservation overlay district in the zoning. But that would be, updating the zoning, creating new zoning regulations down the road. And we're certainly not at that point right now. And we would need legal assistance to develop something like that.
Well, I think it's really great information that is helpful to know, for example, that this doesn't which you've said before, but it's good to hear it again, that it doesn't hamstring the planning board in any way, really, other than it's more for the developer to know that this may be coming down the pike of, some additional harder look. So
Ingrid, may I ask a question? Some of the areas I recall are like, on the ridge, are already like non-buildable zones and things like that. I think I remembered like your work was separate from like the acknowledgement of like, yeah, you can't build in the Swartikill, wetland anyway. So is there a way for us to understand like what are we affecting in what is actually buildable and developable, so that we can understand, like, I think we are going to get some pushback on making development more challenging. Just we're going to see some pushback on that for sure. And I really liked what Michael said about educating folks, especially folks and homeowners who are, previewing this to people and saying, here's why we're doing this. Here's what's happening. Here's how we're addressing it. We want to make you citizens part of the discussion, not, kind of like, we're going to pass this and then you'll figure out what happened one day and then we're going to see you and you're going to be angry. I'd much rather, from attack it that same way is from, hey, let's educate people on why we're doing this and what it does. But so I've said a couple things there. I don't know if you have any comments on that, but especially about the percentage. I know that was an issue that's like, wow, we're trying to protect a lot, and we do have a lot of great resources here, but so many of them feel to me, as I looked at them, like, oh, there's no building there anyway. You're not going to be building on Mohonk Preserve Ridge.
Yeah, so we define the areas ecologically, and you're correct that a large chunk of the areas that are proposed are not buildable, either because they're already protected by organizations like the Mohonk Reserve or others, or they are state wetlands, which are not, 100% protected. Those are regulated areas, and so forth. They're floodplains. I did provide a map back in February that showed kind of the overlaying of wetlands and floodplains on top of the CEAs, and I think also of protected areas. And I can go back and dig that out and reshare that and perhaps update it with the latest information we had from the Community Preservation Plan, which identifies more of the protected land in the town. And now I'm forgetting the other, as far as educating people about what we're doing, I just want to say that we made a big effort throughout this process, kind of following the best practices and starting, we in the early 2019, we presented to the planning board at that point. We presented to you at that point. We had There was coverage in the newspaper. We were at the Earth Day fair. We held a public meeting that was unfortunately very poorly attended because there ended up being like a special school board meeting or something else going on at the same, like last minute at the same time. In the same early this year, there was coverage in the newspaper again and so forth. And I'm certainly happy to do, try to figure out how to do some more outreach about this if you think that that's important.
Well, go ahead, Dan.
And then I want to say something too. So
I think a good opportunity here is that because there are some areas where we don't reasonably think there will be a lot of development, and I think we'd have universal support. I look at something like the Ridge as an example, that maybe what this is we look at that area or some of these other areas. Ingrid, if you could help us better identify that fall into that category and start with those as kind of the jump off point. So we can do a little bit of what David's talking about, is having people better understand the process just beyond what we've also done. And then from there also kind of move into these other areas that we do think though it will potentially be development at some point as well.
So yeah, Dan, thanks for bringing that up. I wanted to kind of hit on that point. And I think, I like the idea that we have all of these areas identified because it shows that we do have a big part of the town that is important. And one of the reasons I really like the idea of the CEAs is that they, like Ingrid said, they're based on science. And that I think that for me, my background in science, I was an ecosystem ecologist. So these are really the way that, I was trained to look at the world, more from an ecosystems perspective, and the sum is greater than the parts, and that you really, you can't just kind of cut these places up, or if you're going to do that, you really have to look at what the value of them is as a whole system. And so I think that's a really important part of the CEAs and why I think it's important to look at them. And when Ingrid and I, when we talked a lot about this, I think this is when people hear we're talking about, almost half the town, and, if the CEAs are new to them, they're like, wow, I think this is, look at the comments we got from the planning board versus the discussion we had tonight, right? You get people have very different, reactions, and they're worried. And so I think one of the ways we could really educate people is, like Dan said, we pick one of these areas that's not controversial, like the Ridge, right? And maybe it doesn't need to be all protected right now because it is protected, but we move forward on one of them. People then see that, oh, well, that there is value in doing something like this, and that it's not going to be the end of the world, right? It doesn't make seeker 10 times more expensive. It doesn't make it more expensive to develop. It just makes it easier for the developer, or it makes it the planning board or the developer knows that, oh, this is an important area, right? And so for me, I think that's one way to move forward is, we start with something that no one's going to complain about. I don't think anyone in town is going to say, oh, how dare you, declare the Ridge to be an important, a critical environmental area. I mean, Shandaken has already done this, right? And so we would be, playing catch up with Shandaken, right? So we move forward on that. We show people that, see, the world didn't fall apart. Nothing went wrong here. And then, we continue to look at all of the other areas, and then we move forward on the ones that we think really need to be, done in an order that they're most threatened. That's just one idea.
May I say something?
Yes.
I would just say, I understand wanting to start off cautiously. On the other hand, this is really not it's not a radical land use kind of regulation. As Michael was describing, it's, it doesn't have, frankly, like a lot of teeth to it. It's really about raising awareness and making sure things are considered, and it's sort of raising information up front during the seeker process. And so it's kind of the low-hanging fruit. It's really one of the most basic things you can do in land use without zoning. And I just would say that these areas are vulnerable. We're facing a tremendous amount of pressure right now. I think you should think very strategically about the vulnerability of particular areas and the resources that are present there. And also keep in mind that it can be very hard, to pick these things up again. I know that CEAs were proposed in the town, I think sometime after the last comprehensive plan was adopted, like in the late 90s or early 2000s. I can't even find that proposal. The man who I think worked on it recently passed away. The information disappears and so I just think now is a opportunity, and we should look really hard at this proposal and at these areas and their values. And if you think they should be smaller and more tightly delineated, that's another thing. But I wouldn't just, I would caution against just deciding to do one of them right now out of, because the others may never happen then.
I agree with
So
you,
one
Ingrid, and I
thing-
know we had this I'm having deja vu, I think this same conversation happened like back in February or something. And I'll just, say my opinion is that I don't agree with you, Neil, that we have to do anything in such a piecemeal way, because there just isn't going to be a great deal of pushback, I don't think. And I'm not saying don't keep discussing it, but I don't agree that is a good way to go. I think we should, right now is when there will be some more development pressure because of the people who are looking to build in this area. There's that 25% increase in Ulster County since COVID in population, or is what I have heard. So, I think I'm not moved to find that necessary. And I know Ingrid, she's been shepherding this, and she's spearheaded it and shepherded it, and to take advantage of her work and make sure it's not lost. I think, I would absolutely favor going ahead and looking at all 6 areas and deciding and using, everything that we can. And I'm very happy to be part of whether it's, whatever research that we might need to do, for example, if, pulling together materials, if you need more people to work on that. I know there's already a lot of, there's most of these areas are already studied, like you said. You have these, you already know so much about these areas. I don't even know if any more information is needed. We just need to know it. The decision makers just need to know it, and we need to go through the process of looking at the areas. So that's what I have to say about it.
So just, I guess, piggybacking a little bit on what you want the area that you live in to look like in 10, 20, 30 years from now. This is such a pivotal time for us to make these kind of decisions. One of it is saying, well, lots of people are moving here. Real estate agents are going to say, oh, I want to move into this area. Why are you making it more difficult? I actually think it's completely the opposite. The reason everyone is moving here, and the reason that this pandemic has created a need for space and for a completely different way of looking into self and how that one self works in the work environment, in the town where you live in, is allowing us to understand that nature is going to be a huge part of our ability to continue to work and to live and to communicate in the future. So we can take this moment and we can use it to our advantage by saying that these critical areas are the whole reason you're coming here in the first place. They're the reason you want to walk in the woods. They're the reason that you want to look at nature. They're the reason, part of the beauty of being able to go into national parks and to go into areas of America that are so special to us is because it brings us back to our center. So these areas allow people to want to move here because they can take their children and their families into these beautiful places, and you're not losing that sense of what this area looked like in the beginning. So I think it's actually a really perfect time for us to take every single one of these areas and emphasize why they're so important for people to live here. That it changes the way in which you wake up in the morning. I wake up in the morning where I live, and I know exactly every single bird and animal and being that lives on my property. And they're just as friendly to me as the human beings that I have. They're my friends. They're the people that I look at. I mean, Julie knows that. Yeah. But I think that this is a great time to actually sell it if you want to create a PR package and say, hey, this is the reason that you all are coming here in the first place. So,
Alex, that was
If I can I jump in, Julie?
Sure.
Yeah. So I just want to echo what you said at the end, Alex, which is now's the time to sell it. Not to just pass it over as we're going to just pass this. I don't believe that's I think it is, that planning board meeting, there was a lot of disinformation at that meeting and a lot of confusion about what these were and what they weren't, and what CEAs would be doing to the planning process and what they weren't. And I'm not in favor of moving forward without bringing in partners. And when Michael said we were part of that process, the planning board was part of a 6-month process of understanding what this is and understanding how it was going to be implemented. I'm not suggesting we need to do that, but I don't want to just say, yep, I know you guys have tons of questions about this. We're passing it and you guys got to deal with it. And figure out what this has to do with it, especially given that our attorney specifically, seemed to be questioning some things that Michael did not echo today. He kind of called some of those things into question. So I think we need to solve some of those misunderstandings so that we can take this on together as a community as much as possible. It's not to say everyone has to be on board, but I am in favor of them. I would be in favor of moving on all of them, especially with understanding, hey, some of these places are already, really protected. So, and not, framing is everything and perception is everything. And we're going to have to put forth this perception. I don't think people are going to look at it as this is just a no-brainer. This is all information. That's going to take time for people to understand, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree, David. For some reason, I guess it's the artist side of me. I think of the posters that Roosevelt put out with WPA post-World War II when he wanted to create national parks. The Senate and the House were both against him. They're like, we can't put in the money right now. It isn't a good time. And he created these beautiful posters of Yosemite and of the redwoods. And he put them out there with this really cool logo and people loved them. And he sold it. He sold the idea of national parks. And they passed his resolution and now we have national parks. So, I mean, that's a lot bigger. It's the whole country. But I do think that that we can sell this at this time and convince people to come in on this train with us. So I'm with you on that.
I just like to see us, if we want to do this in this way and say, we're going to do this, that we, it's not up to Ingrid to do that. It's I'm not sure if Amanda is still on the call, but besides Amanda, there's no member of the planning board on tonight's call. And they should be listening to this conversation or hearing the tape of what Michael said about how this is implemented, because that was a very different discussion than the one that happened months ago at that planning board meeting.
I'm wondering if perhaps he would be willing, since it's by Zoom and he doesn't have to travel, if he could, talk to the planning board about those experiences as well. What I can tell you is we recently had an application come through that went through the EAF and checked no for CEA, not because they don't exist, but because we don't have them officially designated. I had to take it upon myself to go check the Ulster County mapper, the DEC environmental mapper, the Hudson Valley, resource mappers. So I did that, but if I didn't know those existed and how to do them, then I would have lost that information. The CEA does it for you. That's all I'm saying.
Just because you're a member of the planning board, Amanda, can you comment on the conversation around how to move this forward the best way regarding the planning board? You were at that meeting, I assume, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I was. Well, I think having someone like Michael Dupre, and I know he's not the only planning board that has these, CEAs in place. I think Red Hook has some. I think there's some other of our Hudson Valley communities that have CEAs in place to come in. I think what our planning board reacted to was, whoa, is this going to be more work and more expense for us and the applicants? And I think, you know, that's something that needs to be addressed. And I think the way I see it is, instead of getting into this further down the road when you're in the midst of seeker and suddenly maybe these things come up, it's way in the beginning. So before they've done tons of drawings and lots of engineering studies for plan A, they've already said, oh, it's going to have to be plan, you know, B, because we need to work around these certain things. Not that we don't do the project at all, but we take this into account. So
I'd like to see another shot at that conversation
Yeah.
in the planning board, and I feel much more informed to be at that meeting and be part of that discussion if I was able to.
Great.
Amanda, I wonder if there's a way to, you know, ask the planning board members to watch, instead of having Michael come and say it all again, just to watch that, I don't know, what is it, 15, 20 minutes of him talking, so that they
I'm sure we could ask the chair to do that. I mean, we could ask that it be an agenda item. I think it would be a start, but then I think if they have more specific or different kinds of questions than y'all did, it might, and yeah, sorry, but I'm sugar too. I'm from Texas also, that comes out once in a while. That maybe, you know, they would be asking different kinds of questions or more specific, you know, questions to the planning process.
Right.
So, but he's, you know, certainly that's a start as to how.
Yeah, I mean, with Zoom, he didn't have to travel, so he's very willing. So that's great.
I'd love to ask that, because also Rick would get a chance to potentially ask some questions. And in my opinion, our planning board really looks to Rick to lead them. And I don't, you know, without any judgment on my part, they really look to Rick to guide them. And Rick had some real questions, and maybe he had not a lot of experience with CEAs or had a bad experience with CEAs. I'm not sure, but I would suggest we try that conversation again. I would like to at least bring the planning board into understanding that this is just one more box to say, hey, it's a little bit of a harder look when it's already identified. The issues are already identified for you. So you should look at this as a real benefit.
Right.
I just wanted to say that I did invite the planning board. I made sure they were aware that Michael was presenting tonight in case they had a chance to listen. And I also wanted to say that he mentioned Emily Svensson, who was on the CAC in Hyde Park at the time that they designated these CEAs. She then went on to serve on the town board in Hyde Park. Now she works as an environmental land use attorney, and she has also offered to provide a legal perspective on CEAs. She wasn't able to participate tonight because of a conflicting meeting, but she has made that offer. So I want to put that out there.
And we, you know, the planning board absolutely does rely on our attorneys' input, but that doesn't, you know, there may be other valuable perspectives that could, you know, that we could all learn something from. I mean, we don't want to disregard him or you know, downplay his input at all. But it, you know, it may be like you said, his experience has been one way, and maybe he could explain that to us, and then we could hear from someone else. But I don't know. Yeah. Okay.
How do we keep this on the agenda so it doesn't just get lost?
Well, you know, the planning board advises the town board, but the town board also, you know, works with the planning board. So, you know, either ENCB can bring it back to us again, or the town board could, you know, ask the planning board to, you know, you have not put this to bed. It's still an active project for you. And certainly we want to work together with you, so.
I think if a planning board member is willing to take this on as their project, that's the safest way to ensure that it doesn't fall off the agenda.
So dear Neil, you know that I am sometimes the outlier on the planning board. I'm certainly willing to do that.
No, I mean a town board member needs to take this.
I'm happy to bring it to the planning board. Great. We would like you to look at critical environmental areas again, that the town board is looking at moving forward on this, and we don't want to do it without the planning board and, and our advisors in the planning area to understand what we're doing and why we're considering it so strongly. And like, let's have another discussion. Does that seem like a good way to go forward, Ingrid?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
I think
Okay.
something this big, in terms of concept and it should not be something that the planning board or any board just decides in one meeting on the first hearing, the first run through. It's like, everybody needs to digest it a little bit and think about, well, what does this mean and how does it work? And to me, once I saw what Ingrid, thank you. Also, we did not pay another consultant to do this work for us. Ingrid took this on as I guess it was, came out of when we attended the Lula training, as one of the projects that could be done. So we have a wealth of information and knowledge that was put together for us. And we shouldn't, just because we got it for free, think it's not worth something. It's worth a tremendous amount.
Oh my God.
And what we found out about New Paltz is, wow, we know it's special. Why? But now we know why it's special. Some really specific things that maybe we just perceive but don't understand that well. And now we have this information, and it's really quite amazing. So yeah.
I'll just add something that I wanted to say earlier, and that it's after Alex Bear spoke. It was so eloquent, but as she was speaking, I was thinking about, for example, the beavers and how, it's one small, there was a great article in the New Paltz Times today about the beavers, and the Aaron Quinn mentioned Millbrook Preserve, but without them, we lose this huge ecosystem architect, and we have, it's cascading effects. So that's just an example. If you don't develop right, you might very well lose, that. And I'll just say too, another thing I thought of when Alex was speaking was how I went out with Ingrid on a walk one time, and we saw spotted turtles, mating actually. This is just such an, really, it was, I'll never forget it, to see these, I guess, Ingrid says that she has some designation, but they're essentially endangered, would you say, in New York State?
Special concern species. It's a candidate for federal listing right now, actually.
Yeah, so we have them. We saw them with our own eyes, and they were using our land, our body of water in the village to mate. So if the more people know, I think Michael was even suggesting people are happy to know. They're happy to support these things that help. That make them feel good. That they're not just wanting to just get blast through and ignore these things. I think that we have to give developers the credit that they're going to want to do the right thing and appreciate what we have here and respect it.
So like David said, the next steps on this would be what? Presenting this to the planning board?
I would say not presenting. What I'm going to do is ask for them to put this on their agenda
I see.
and coordinate with Ingrid and a friendly and nonpartisan expert from another community to come and say, this is our experience. We've had a wonderful experience. And just what we heard tonight was, that was, you can't make that up. And that's like, oh, this should give us a whole lot more confidence that we can move forward. No disrespect, Ingrid, intended at all. I really, really cannot say enough about what it's like to have someone like you in our community, to have you in our community to do the work that you do to support all of what you do for the environment. So with no disrespect, I'm just aware of the politics, and I want it to move forward and not get stopped up. So I want to handle it in a way, I'd like to see us handle it in a way that brings people into agreement as much as possible. So I'm going to reach out to the planning board, ask them to put it on the agenda. I'm going to really request that our town board members attend that meeting and be part of that conversation, that this is a conversation that we can get in together. Town board members can say, we're moving forward if we feel that way. If you all feel we want to move forward on this, let's get our understanding together. Rick will be like, well, it sounds like everyone wants to move forward. What do we got to do to move forward? You know, that all of those things start to make something happen in a way that it doesn't make a difference if there's a little pushback. But if there's very divided concerns and there's pushback, now we're in a much more difficult situation.
So yeah, I want to say I agree with David. I would love to do all of the areas, right? I think that the explanation we heard tonight was very different than the explanation we heard the last time we talked about this. And so the reason I was proposing to do a single one was to kind of show people that, see, it's not a big deal. We can do this. It's not the end of the world. But if we have a conversation and we educate people and we bring in outside experts who have experience with this and help educate everyone and get everyone on board, then that's great. We should do all 6. I was just proposing that we do one, not because I only think one is worthwhile, but I wanted to show that we can do this and it's not the end of the world. But if we can do all 6 and we can get everyone on board, let's do it.
We just have to do it. We just have to do it well. We got one shot to do it well. Let's really do it well.
And that's the other thing. If we can't get everyone on board to do all 6, then do we go back and do it incrementally, right?
And Ingrid, that's the hard part, is like when you say if the town board wants us to look at a smaller area, it's like, well, we would ask our expert on that and we'd be asking you. So, you have to guide us there about smaller areas, larger areas. It comes down to the same discussion we had about the referendum we passed. What's the right percentage? It's like, what's going to help people get where they need to go so that we can make a big enough impact. It's a balance. So help us strike the right balance so that we can make this happen and that we can protect as much as we can and have the highest rate of possibility of putting something in that's gonna really have an impact in our community.
All right.
Thank you all for all of your thoughts on this tonight. It's been really great.
Thanks.
I'll write that letter and ask to be on the nearest agenda possible. Obviously, knowing that, Ingrid, you're going to have to do a little bit of inviting other experts to come. So we'll try to get that to happen as soon as possible.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Ingrid and Amanda.
Thanks.
All right, on to number 2 on our agenda. So may I have a motion to, I'd like to make a motion to approve items 2A through 2C on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
No opposed. So the number 3 is the seeker resolution for the proposed sewer inflow and infiltration study, New York EPG number 94026. This resolution has been posted on the town website. It states that the town assumes lead agency for the grant project and that the study is a type 2 negative action under seeker. I would like to make a resolution to pass. Resolution is written.
Second, David.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so this next one, this is Ted is here, I think. Hopefully you're still here after almost 2 hours.
He is, Ted.
I don't know if Ted wants to, this is our, to designate an authorized representative and appropriate the minimum local match regarding the grant agreement. So I don't know if people have questions for Ted. So this grant, Walden Engineering and Ted wrote this grant for us back in 19. This is to do, Ted, do you want to come on and explain what inflow and infiltration is and what the study is about and why we want to be doing a study like this in New Paltz?
Certainly. I appreciate the opportunity to be there this evening. I want to also introduce Joe Burden. He's also here with Walden. He's an engineer that works with me. So a sanitary sewer system inflow and infiltration study looks at leaks getting into the sanitary sewer system, like stormwater or groundwater, snow melt, things like that, that can be a contribution to overwhelming sewer system when it rains or is underperforming. Being part of the New Paltz community, it's important to note that this project benefits both the town's sanitary sewer system as well as the village's sanitary sewer system, where all the sewage goes, and then also helps us at the wastewater treatment plant better perform. And that happens because what we're doing is looking for sources of leakage of water that's getting into the sanitary sewer system that's not supposed to or doesn't need to go there in the first place. For instance, rainwater doesn't need to be treated at the wastewater treatment plant, but once it mixes in with the rest of the sewage, domestic sewage, industrial sewage from SUNY, then it does need to be treated at the wastewater treatment plant. So the more we can keep stormwater, groundwater, snow melt out of the sanitary sewer system, the less that needs to be treated, the more money we're saving, and also we're lowering the probability of overflows or upsets in the systems or other problems that could cause environmental problems or cost the community more money or environmental damage. This project and its grant application that was funded by the town of New Paltz had the support of the mayor of New Paltz also, and a number of other groups. So an inflow and infiltration study uses a number of different ways. Televised cameras inside the sewers, smoke testing, just old-fashioned inspections of the manholes, and a number of other ways to look at the existing sanitary sewer system and ways that it can be improved. The DEC likes these kind of studies because they can help identify problems in the sanitary sewer system before they become big problems. And they can also not only keep the environmental problems out, but also lower the cost for consumers, for ratepayers, and the community. So the grant was awarded to the town of New Paltz. It'd be the first, if not the first in a long time, for the town to look closely at its sewers in a grant type environment. It does have a 20% local match, which is part of this resolution, but that can be provided by and is planned to be provided by in-kind service by town staff and resources. Another good component of it is it does have a women-owned and minority-owned business portion, as well as a service-disabled veteran-owned business portion, which we were able to fulfill by reaching out to other partner firms in the state. So the first resolution that you've got here does two things. One, it designates a lead person to sign off and administer the grant. That would be the supervisor, Neil. And then it also commits the town to providing for that 20% match, which again is being planned for. And we're quite confident that that we'll be able to fit the bill of providing that with in-kind services of existing staff and resources with the town. I can address any questions. We've looked over the language. The resolution is was provided, or the resolution language was provided by the DEC. Mark Howard is a project coordinator with DEC, helps us to shepherd these projects through. So language has been reviewed by their engineering staff and their legal staff, both the resolution, the seeker resolution that you just passed, and then the upcoming contract to get that work underway. Joe or I can answer any questions you've got, but we're pleased to be able to bring this to the town for these improvement type projects.
Ted, first, congratulations on the grant award. It's great. And can you give us just the numbers of what we're looking at? What's the grant for, and Neil, can you answer? I assume Chris and his team are going to end up fulfilling the match. Is that correct or not necessarily so?
Some of the match would be administrative, I think, as well. Right, but it would be maybe use of town equipment. You know, if we go out there and they help Ted and they, you know, do the, the studies with the smoke tests and stuff like that. Gotcha. So, and you can bill at, you know, whatever the going rate is for our equipment. It adds up pretty quick. So the grant is for $80,000 and the in-kind match is $16,000, up to $16,000.
Great, and Ted, obviously, as we're talking about the sewers, the village is all involved and all part of this. So this is a full go ahead from them as well, I assume.
Well, I would, there's always a nuance, or there's always splitting hairs. The I&I study that we're doing is going to be looking at both town sewer areas. Much of that is sewers that lead to the village. But there's also the Ohioville system. The Ohioville system has its own, treatment facility. We're not going to look at the treatment facility with this grant, but the pipes in the infrastructure that lead to the Ohioville facility. So it's both of those sanitary sewer systems that are covered under this grant.
But the village is, they know about this study, and they appreciate the fact that we're doing this study. We have not done, like Ted said, we probably, we have a lot of other stuff going on in the town, and we probably haven't put as much effort as we should into the town's I&I studies over time. I think that the village has done this pretty regularly. They've been, they have a bigger system. They've been writing these grants. I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure that we're not, the village is
the cause of their trouble.
Yes, we have an obligation as well to do these studies, and also, there's been long-standing tension between the town and the village. Does the town get to, if so, say someone wants to develop something in the town, we have to go hat in hand to the village and say, oh, can we have some sewer capacity, right? If we find leaks in our systems that's contributing to their problems, it's easier for us to go to them and say, well, you know what, we need some more capacity for a project that we're working on town outside of the village. That's some of the rationale.
Thank you, Neil.
And if water can leak into sewer pipes, sewage can leak out of sewage pipes. So it's important to find these leaks, not just because it diminishes capacity during spring melt, but also it's not good for Trip 13, right? Trip 13 is just downstream from Sewer District 5, and it's connected to Sewer District 5. So that's one of the reasons that we may want to do a study like this. And so, any more questions?
And Trip 13 is, Riverkeeper is monitoring it there, and that's what goes through Millbrook Preserve, and it's very affected by Enterococcus, which is feces, of some sort. So Ted, that would be something that could potentially come out of this?
I think so. Well, yes, it does. I'd caution you, or I'd lower the expectations. There aren't a lot of sewer pipe areas that we're going to be looking at that are directly, in the shadows of the Millbrook and even the tributary 13 area. There are, but as I look at the area, I don't see this as a tremendous opportunity to look at perhaps the causes or the tribulations of tributary 13. We had incidentally looked at other grant applications for looking at failed or failing septic systems, or other sources that might be in that specific tributary 13 area. I think those still probably have more potential. But as Neil was saying before, I think that the village and the town and others that have looked at the sanitary sewer system have seen this as this I&I study as the first step of a good thing for the sewer systems. I think, other benefits that might have, even more potential is like what Neil was saying, is that if we can identify significant improvements to, we'll say, dry out the pipes, which is, what you call the improvements from an I&I study, then you can, be more aggressive about failed and failing septic systems or other areas that might have, a bigger impact in that tributary 13 area. One thing before I forget, Councilman Brownstein, I appreciate the congratulations, but I would bring it back to you guys. I mean, this was, the CFA application process is not free. And this board, although, the last term, this board invested in these kind of grant opportunities. We were pleased to be a part of it, but it was, it was this board spending those kind of funds in a smart way on these kind of grant applications, and buy-in from the village and other community partners that really, made it a process. The congratulations is to, New Paltz as a community.
All right, anything else? If not, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to be designate the supervisor as authorized to execute the grant agreement and to agree to a 20% match of grant award of up to $16,000 in kind.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, number 4 is I'd like to make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign a Walden environmental contract for the sewer inflow and infiltration study.
Second.
Yeah, that's just the correction. That's number 5 on the agenda.
Number 5 on the agenda. Yes.
Yep.
Yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And before I forget, I have an old agenda in front of me. On the consent agenda, there was a D. I just asked to approve items A through C. Rosanna sent me a note. I missed item D. Item D is a motion to close Town of New Paltz Community Partnership checking account ending in 6142. The account has been dormant for several years and will not be needed again in the near future. There's a zero balance in the account. We just need to close the account out.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks for letting me get the number before I forgot. So this last is we're revising the Clean Water Open Space Law. Now that we've passed the Community Preservation Fund, the Community Preservation Fund law that we passed and then the voters passed with the referendum, the money from that needs to go in by authorizing resolution into the Community Preservation Fund that was established. In the CWASP law, they also said that if there is ever a transfer tax passed, it would need to go into CWASP, but we need to revise and take that section out of that law. And because the Community Preservation Fund tax needs to go into a separate fund. And so, CWASP still exists and it still has the bonding capability, but we have to keep the bank account separate. And so we need to modify that law. And the text is on the town's website, but I'd like to set a public hearing to amend Chapter 44 for Thursday, December 17th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Neil.
Make sure I didn't miss anything. Let me check my email here. TD and consent agenda. Yes. Okay. I think that's it. So I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop the recording now.